Hello collectors, and welcome to my review of the Figma Giant Warrior. This creature comes from the short film A Giant Warrior Descends on Tokyo, and the Figma was offered at a special event in Japan celebrating Japanese special effects, and then it was later offered as a Good Smile Company online shop exclusive. The real question is if it's any good. So sit back, relax, and let's take a look to see whether or not it's worth adding into your collection. The best aspect of the Giant Warrior would absolutely be the looks. This was sculpted using a 3D printing of the actual puppet and had some details added in by hand. And really, you can tell it paid off because it just looks great. However, do note there are some noticeable differences from the prototype, but it's nothing so major it should sway you away from buying it. First, a look at the head where you can see the translucent green eyes, which look absolutely stunning. They reflect light very well. Now, on the prototype, they were a metallic green with a hole in them for the pupils, which would be similar to, say, Ultra 7's eyes, but the final product looks just as nice, and it's a simply fine enough compromise. Also, as you can see, the teeth have a nice cream-colored paint to them. But unfortunately, if you actually take a look at the jaw of the Giant Warrior, you can see it's a bit sloppy, and there's a tooth right there which has no paint, which is a bit unfortunate. However, when you actually take a look at the sculpting of the Giant Warrior, as you can see here on the side of the head, you can see the veins, and taking a look at the back, you can see the intricate details there. And these small paint issues, like the teeth, are absolutely entirely forgettable, because it actually looks like it's wearing a helmet. It's so cool. Moving down to the chest, you can really focus in on the sculpt here, and you can see it looks absolutely amazing. You can also see the random green gems in the chest, which feature that metallic green paint which was supposed to be used for the eyes. Also, though the figure is mainly brown, a nice blue-gray wash was used to really bring out the different muscles, if you will, to help them stand out. Moving along, the spikes used for the shoulders and on the collarbone of the Giant Warrior are a nice orange translucent plastic with some brown paint at the base. And if the light hits these just right, they look astounding. Now, do be careful. As you move the Giant Warrior around, specifically at the shoulders, you'll notice that these are attached onto a separate plate. Now, the reason why I say be careful is that these things, which one is it? This one here, yeah, if you're not careful, the glue may break and you may be able to pop them off, but in the event you should, it's not a big deal because they just pop right back in like so. Moving to the arms of the Giant Warrior, these thin limbs even still look very nice, and the detail is absolutely kept. Now, of note, I'll bring it up here since the elbow joints are very prominent on this figure. The joints on the prototype were expertly blended into the overall product, and had paint and what looked like, to me, sculpt details to it. But that's not found on the final product. It is on the prototype, but not the final product. So those of you who are experienced with the Figma line and know exactly what to expect from prototype to final product, this should not come as a surprise. But to those of you who are specifically only into kaiju, just be aware of this. A look here at the hip pelvis area where you can tell the details are still expertly kept, and they look absolutely fantastic. The sculpting detail is very nice here. And once again, I make mention of the joints. Just be aware that they're not sculpted or painted like you may be led to believe in the prototype pictures. Whoops. Here's the shin area with the calves, very thin framed here. And then a look at the skeletal-like feet. Very nicely done. And here's a nice shot of the back of the Giant Warrior, so this way you can really, really tell that the sculpt details are great. I said it a bunch of times because it's true. The sculpt is awesome. The paint's great too. Now, the figure is made of a softer plastic, as I sort of hinted at throughout this portion of the review, so you'll see how that will affect the articulation in just a little bit. But in general, this means you need to keep the figure in a safe environment and make sure it's not exposed to rather harsh conditions, or bad things may happen, such as plastic degradation. Overall, the Giant Warrior has a funky tree man or skeleton with a little bit of muscle left on it look, and it's captured remarkably well in the Figma. If you're looking for something creepy or just a figure that has a generally nice looking design, this is definitely something to consider. And it helps it can kind of twerk. The Giant Warrior's articulation is pretty much exactly what you would expect. it's an action figure. But unfortunately, due to either the materials used for it or the actual sculpted parts, you may find it to just be a little bit restricted. First off, the giant warrior's head is attached to its neck on a ball joint, so you're going to be able to spin the head around as much as you would like. Left, right, up, and down. Unfortunately, you can't get it to look up any more than that because of this little, I guess you could say, hood for the helmet or the head of the giant warrior. But, you know, you get enough range as it is. And then the mouth is on a hinge, so it opens and closes, though not too much, and it's rather difficult to get to open, but you can get it to open, which is pretty neat. Going from there, you have the neck, which is actually attached onto the body on a very weird joint, because it's seated in here on a ball joint, and then you have the typical Figma joint, which allows you to move this joint in a hinge motion, and then the actual neck attaches onto this joint overall on a swivel. So basically, you're going to be able to get the neck to move around in any direction you would like, and it's very helpful because the giant warrior is rather creepy, and you can definitely put the head in some creepy poses. Now, moving down from there, we have the shoulders, which are attached into the body on a ball joint. So you can move the shoulder around like this, but you have these little shoulder pads here, which do plug into the body, so it may restrict the articulation just a little bit, but that's fine, because you can also spin the arm around like this to avoid any issues which these shoulder pads may cause. And then you have a working hinge here, which allows you to move the arm up and down, but this portion right here, the actual shoulder of the giant warrior, is sculpted onto the body, but fortunately, it's made of a flexible plastic. So if you want to, you can definitely move the arm up, but just know that this may get in the way of you totally raising it up, but luckily, if you're smart enough, you can just figure out, oh hey, I can turn it around. Now, moving down from there, this portion of the arm, the bicep, is plugged in to the shoulder joint on a swivel, so you can spin the arm like this, as you can see. And then moving down from there, we have one of the typical Figma style joints for the elbow, which is basically just a single hinge. So you're going to be able to get some decent movement out of there. And luckily, this joint plugs into both the bicep and the forearm on a swivel, so if you want, you can spin those around, just like so. And then moving down from there, we have the wrist, which the hands plug in on a peg, so you get the swivel motion, like so. And then there's a little hinge here. So those of you familiar with the older style Figma wrist joint know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those of you who don't know, basically, you're only able to move the hand in one direction. So if you wanted to pose the hand, such as this, pointing down, sort of like that, as if the giant warrior would go to give someone a handshake, you can't do that. And that also comes into play with the wrist, and I'll show you why that may be a bit of an issue for you later. Moving down from there, we have the ab crunch, which is on a ball joint. So you're going to be able to get the giant warrior to tilt forward and back like so. And since it's on a ball joint, you can spin the giant warrior all the way around if you want to at the abdomen area. So that's pretty nice. And then moving down from there, we have a very weird joint setup for the hips. So as you can see here, the thighs are actually attached to the hips on a ball joint, but the type of system we have going on here is an actual Y-style joint. So you have the two ball joints here, and they meet right at about here, and they plug in to the lower end of the body on a ball joint, as you can see here. So you can get this individual joint construction to move back and forth if you really want it to, and you can twist it around a little bit. Moving on from there, as I said, the thighs are actually attached to the hips on a ball joint, so you're going to be able to get the legs to move around just fine enough. As you can see here, pretty great range of movement, because anything that would go wrong in the waist-hip area, up here, the actual sculpt part, it's made of a softer plastic, so this way it will definitely have some give to it, so nothing's really restricted there. And then the ball joints actually plug in to the upper thigh on a socket, which acts as a swivel. That's not the ball joint there, that's the actual swivel joint moving around, which is nice. Moving down from there, we have the knees, which are on the same style joint the elbows are on, so you have a single hinge there, and the sculpt does block the articulation there, just a little bit. And then moving on down from there, we have the ankle joints, which are, once again, the same sort of style joint that the elbows use. So you're going to be able to get the ankles to move forward and back like so, and then you can get a little bit of the ankle rocker motion out of the ankles. So you can tilt the foot around if you wanted to. Now, something to really keep in note, the giant warrior uses soft plastic. So if you want to put the giant warrior in a specific pose, make sure you have adequate support, because there have been plenty of times where I just needed to turn the heat up a little bit in the winter, and the giant warrior went from a pose like this to that when it went unattended because the plastic gave out and, well, the joints got loose and it fell over. So just do keep in mind, as you can see here, that the soft plastic may not necessarily be all that great for specific poses. And to be perfectly honest, don't be surprised if stuff would pop off of your giant warrior as you're trying to put it in different poses. So overall, the articulation, it's nice, and if you're creative, you can definitely get around some of the natural flaws this sculpt would have. But one universal issue I see everyone having trouble with is that the soft plastic, it's definitely not so conducive to an action figure because stuff will be loose and stuff will pop off. But luckily, there are some accessories which definitely can help prevent this. In terms of accessories, the Giant Warrior basically comes with everything you would absolutely need for it, except for one item. First off, the Giant Warrior comes with one extra set of hands, and that would be fists, which are slightly open so this way you can hold another accessory. And to swap the hands out is really easy to do. Just grab the currently attached hand, pop it out, and pop the new hand in, like so. Now remember before when I said it used the old style Figma joint? This is kind of where it comes into play here, because as you can see, you can get the fist to move in and out like so, but you can't get it to rock forward and back or up and down, whatever you would prefer to call this motion, to get the hand to move that way. And factoring in the next accessory, that's why it's a bit disappointing. Because the Giant Warrior comes with its giant walking stick, or as it's described on the Good Smile Company's page, the Rod of Light. And it comes in two separate parts, which you can see here, just get connected by a peg. And the Giant Warrior can actually hold this, and this Rod of Light is actually pretty large. For safety reasons though, specifically so I don't snap the rod, I like to insert it into his hands in two different parts. First, I slide the part with the hole in it through the top of the Giant Warrior's hand, like so, and then I take the peg end and I insert it into the hole just like so. So this way nothing snaps, and everything's good to go. And see, that's kind of one of the reasons why the soft plastic sucks, because the ankles are weak. Anyway, to really show why that lack of motion in that specific direction is sad, is that if you really want the Giant Warrior to, say, bend his wrist like I'm doing here, which is not a good idea, folks, don't do this. I'm applying pressure in a position that the joint should not receive pressure. You're not going to be able to get him to sort of point this Rod of Light forward, but instead you have to do something like this to get any sort of movement out of the wrist. You could, in theory, straighten the arm out and sort of angle the Rod of Light even more, but sometimes for that one specific pose, you're not going to be able to get the right expression out of it. Moving on from there, you get an extra headpiece which has the proton beam cannon at the ready, so this way it can destroy all of the planet extremely easily. Now, this extra head is basically the normal head with longer teeth and this proton beam part attached in, because that little hole is also found on the standard head. So if you wanted to get creative for stop motion, you definitely can with this piece. And swapping out the two different head parts, it's easy to do, but you gotta read the instructions or watch this video so this way you know how to do it easily. Because looking at the head part, you would assume, okay, I gotta pop off the neck that's currently attached and I gotta dig out this ball joint because it comes with an extra neck joint, so there you go. That's what I got to do. No, this neck joint that comes attached out of the box to this head, consider this an extra neck joint. You don't need to pop that off of the one that's currently attached to your Giant Warrior. You just got to shimmy the neck that's currently attached off like so. So this way that neck joint stays attached. And then you take the new head and neck and just pop it onto the currently attached joint. And there you go. Now the Giant Warrior is ready to destroy your shelf. Next up, for the accessories, you get two of these gigantic wing pieces for the Giant Warrior, which you see at the start of the short film. And attaching these to the Giant Warrior, it's an easy process, but there are a few steps involved. And if you don't actually know what you're doing, you're probably going to break the damn thing. So watch carefully. What you need to do is you need to pop the arm off, like so. And then you have this little shoulder blade sculpt here. Yeah, that can get popped off very easily. And you do that by either forcing this and wriggling it right off of the joint, like so. Again, it's soft plastic. One of the few times the soft plastic actually benefits the Giant Warrior. And then you have this joint here, the shoulder joint, which you can just pop off if you really want to, but you don't really need to. So you pop that on. Now, you'll notice that when you pop that shoulder sculpt off, you have this little hole here. It's where the wing goes. So make sure that this joint is straight because you don't want to break it. Then you line up the wing and just keep working it until you have a nice snug fit, and then you can reattach the arms, like so. You do that for both of them. Now, for this one, I showed you that you can just pull this over the ball joint if you want. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that because you may unfortunately tear this thin piece of plastic here. So to be the safest, if you really want to, you can pop the actual shoulder joint off and then you can remove this, but either way, it gets the same thing done. Now, as you would imagine, these are very hard pieces of plastic, and because the ankles use soft pieces of plastic, not specifically the joints, but the sculpts around it, yeah, it's going to fall over, even more so than it normally would. So how do you prevent this problem? Thankfully, this figure comes with its own Figma stand. So this way, if you want more support for your giant warrior, you're going to be able to get it just fine and dandy. And using it is really easy to do, because in the middle of the back of the giant warrior, it has this little hole, as you can see right there where my thumb is, and that hole is for the plug on the support arm. So this way, all you have to do is just work it ever so gently onto the support arm, and now your giant warrior can fly, and it has a little extra support. Now, for some of you, you may think, oh boy, I don't know if I like that specific connection. Thankfully, there's another option part for this. You get this nice claw, which plugs in the same way to the support stand as you would plug it in directly to the giant warrior's back. Just like that. Those of you who are familiar with the Tamashii stage act stuff should know exactly how this would work. It's just a support claw, and then all you would have to do is line up the giant warrior like so, and now you have an arguably better support system. So all in all, the giant warrior comes with a lot of cool stuff. The only thing that it would be missing would be an actual proton super omega depth beam, which it uses to obliterate Tokyo. But I guess if you have other effect parts from other characters, specifically say the SH Monster Arts Fire Rodan with its uranium beam, that's one option, you can definitely come up with your own makeshift effect for that. So when it's all said and done, like I said, lots of cool accessories, and it pretty much comes with all of the essentials. In terms of sizing, the giant warrior really doesn't take up that much room. First up, here's the giant warrior alongside some Ultra Acts. Here it is next to some of NECA's kaiju offerings. And finally, alongside some SH Monster Arts. So as you can see, though the giant warrior is tall, it has a very thin frame, so it should take next to no shelf space at all. So, buy it now, skip it, or wait for a deal. The sculpt and paint details are great, and anyone who appreciates a nice looking action figure will love this one. However, it's made of a soft plastic to accommodate accessories and whatnot, and some may find this to be an issue, specifically with the articulation. Because of the soft plastic, it causes some areas like the ankle, shoulder, and hip joints to pop off with ease. Because of this, you may have to use more conservative poses. And to be perfectly honest with you, don't be surprised if you end up finding your giant warrior taking a shelf dive in this position. It does come with some neat accessories though, which make for great display opportunities, so you'll be able to get very creative with this character. It even comes with a stand, so if you sacrifice a little more shelf space, you can put it in some zany poses. All in all, it's not a bad figure, but it does have some issues which will really get under the skin of some, while it won't even faze others. In general, I would try to get this as cheap as you possibly can. It's fun, but it's not perfect, and if you pay a little bit more than MSRP, you may find it to be, well, not entirely rewarding.